The moment a woman realizes she's lost you is the moment her reality begins to shift. Up until that point, she lives with the quiet comfort of knowing she has your attention, your validation, and your emotions under her control. As long as she believes you'll always be available, always ready to respond, she can carry herself with a sense of power. But when that certainty slips, when she begins to feel the absence of your presence, the cracks start to show. She notices you no longer reach out the way you once did. She notices your energy isn't wrapped around her anymore. At first, she may act as if it doesn't matter. She'll play the role of indifference, saying things like, "I don't care what he does," or, "He was never that important." She'll put on the mask of being unbothered, maybe even cold or arrogant. But that's only surface. The deeper truth is panic, a quiet desperation that begins to grow behind her words and actions. Her so-called indifference is not proof of her strength. It's proof of her loss. Because if she truly didn't care, she wouldn't need to declare it so loudly. The man who stays calm long enough sees this clearly. He notices that the louder she insists she's fine, the more it reveals her emptiness. Silence unsettles her because it forces her to sit with the reality that the grip she once held is gone. What she's really experiencing is the loss of control, and that loss changes her completely. The mask begins to crack, and though she may not admit it, her actions reveal everything. For the first time, she realizes she no longer holds the power because you've taken it back. When she feels that grip slipping, her behavior shifts into a series of small but calculated moves designed to pull you back in. She may reach out with sudden texts that seem harmless on the surface, messages that feel casual but are actually fishing for reaction. She might post something suggestive online, not because she's genuinely living her best life, but because she wants to see if you'll notice, if you'll still give her the validation she once took for granted. Sometimes she won't come directly to you at all but will let your name surface through mutual friends, hoping word will reach you and spark curiosity. These are not accidents. They're deliberate hooks thrown into the water to test if you'll bite, if she can still influence your emotions, if you'll still orbit her world even when she's no longer holding your hand. The irony is that the more you ignore these moves, the more unsettled she becomes. Your lack of reaction doesn't give her the reassurance she's looking for. Instead, it amplifies her anxiety. A man who doesn't respond begins to live in her mind far more than a man who reacts to everything. When silence becomes your answer, her obsession grows because it proves something she can't control. She no longer matters the way she once did. When those small tests fail, she often stages what looks like joy. She'll post pictures with new people, highlight moments that seem filled with laughter, or exaggerate her happiness for the world to see. But genuine happiness is quiet. It doesn't need a stage or an audience. The need to perform is itself the confession. Deep down, she knows the act isn't convincing anyone, least of all herself. And that's when the panic begins to deepen. When she senses that her usual tactics aren't working, her treatment of you often changes form. Instead of indifference or staged happiness, she may suddenly become softer, almost gentle in how she approaches you. Out of nowhere, she might reach out with a kind message, speak to you in a polite tone, or bring up warm memories from the past. It may look like affection is returning, but what's really happening is fear. She knows that once a man emotionally detaches, once his heart no longer beats to the rhythm of her approval, winning him back becomes nearly impossible. Her sudden kindness is not rooted in love. It's rooted in her awareness that she's losing control. Alongside this shift, guilt becomes one of her weapons. She may remind you of all the moments you shared, the things you did for her, or the sacrifices you made together. She may say things like, "I can't believe you moved on so fast," or, "After everything we had, you just don't care anymore." These statements aren't about her cherishing you. They're about her trying to bind you with guilt so she can regain the upper hand. Guilt is her way of pulling at your emotions, making you feel as though detaching is cruel, as though moving on is betrayal. But the man who sees through this recognizes the truth. Love doesn't return in sudden bursts of nostalgia or desperate pleas. Real love grows steady, not out of panic, but out of respect and consistency. When she treats you kindly only after sensing your detachment, it's not love rekindled, it's fear disguised as warmth. And when you no longer respond to guilt or soften to false kindness, she realizes her grip is slipping even further. When her softer attempts fail, her approach often takes on a sharper edge. Instead of reaching out directly, she begins to use indirect manipulation. She might drop subtle hints through mutual friends, making sure you hear that she still talks about you. She might post vague captions or cryptic messages online, designed to look general but aimed directly at you. These moves are not random. They're deliberate ways of trying to reinsert herself into your thoughts without having to risk rejection by coming to you openly. Indirect manipulation is her attempt to work around the silence that she can no longer break head-on. If that fails, provocation becomes her weapon. She may throw subtle insults your way, make backhanded comments, or deliberately bring up things she knows might trigger you. Sometimes it's not even words, it's actions meant to spark jealousy or frustration, all for the purpose of getting a reaction. Because in her mind, anger still equals involvement. If you lash out, it means she still matters. If you defend yourself, it means she still has space in your head. But silence? Silence means she no longer has control, and that is the most unsettling outcome for her. This is why provocation can become so aggressive. She would rather ignite conflict than face the emptiness of your indifference. To her, even a negative reaction proves you're still tethered to her. But the man who stays calm, who doesn't retaliate or allow himself to be drawn back into arguments, reveals the truth. When her chaos burns out against your stillness, she's forced to face reality. What she thought was control has vanished. And that's when she realizes silence is more powerful than any game she can play. As the loss settles in deeper, her treatment of you begins to swing between extremes. On one hand, she may suddenly flood you with nostalgia, bringing up old memories, inside jokes, or photos from years ago. She might say things like, "Remember when we," or even admit, "I didn't realize what I had back then." But notice the timing, this regret doesn't show up when she feels confident or in control. It surfaces only when she knows the version of you who once placed her on a pedestal is gone. It's less about missing you as a man and more about missing the feeling of power she once had over you. Alongside this regret often comes jealousy. She might start fishing for information, asking subtle questions about your life or watching closely to see if another woman has stepped into the space she once occupied. She may stalk your social media, linger on your stories, or make indirect comments about your relationships. Few things shake her more than realizing she can be replaced. The thought of you giving your time, attention, and affection to someone else eats at her pride. When jealousy doesn't work, competition steps in. She may suddenly try to showcase her life as if it's flourishing without you. New achievements, new relationships, new adventures, all displayed as proof she's winning. But genuine happiness doesn't need proof. The very act of flaunting reveals its weakness. It isn't about her living freely. It's about ensuring you don't feel like you got the better end of the deal. And when those performances still don't bring you back, she may rewrite history altogether. She'll downplay your role, claim she never cared as much, or paint herself as the one who gave everything. But deep down, she knows the truth gnaws at her no matter how she spins the story. When every other move fails, her behavior often shifts into what looks like reconciliation. She may suddenly suggest talking things through, meeting up just to clear the air, or dropping soft lines like, "I've been thinking about us." On the surface, it can sound genuine, but underneath it's not about closure or healing. It's about reopening a door she knows is closing for good. False reconciliation is her last attempt to re-establish influence, not to rebuild love. The words may sound familiar, but they no longer carry the weight they once did. To the man who has detached, they feel hollow, like a script she's run too many times before. If that fails, she may turn to dramatics. She might suddenly create crises, exaggerate problems, or present herself as someone in desperate need of help. Maybe she claims she has no one else to turn to, hoping to reignite your protective instinct. These moments aren't about trust or vulnerability. They're about pulling you back into her orbit, any way she can. But a man who has grown sees through this. He can show compassion without reattaching, listen without surrendering, and stand calm while refusing to step back into old patterns. Eventually, when every strategy fails, silence becomes her only option. She withdraws, not because she no longer cares, but because she realizes she no longer has access. Her silence is an admission that the door is sealed. From that point on, her treatment of you is marked not by control, but by quiet admiration laced with regret. She may watch from a distance, noticing your growth, your wins, your evolution. And the hardest truth for her is this: she didn't just lose you. She lost the man you became after her. And that realization lingers long after you've forgotten her name.